Welcome to the Introduction to Spirituality and Work, number 3. This presentation provides a brief overview of the course content as well as a focused look at spiritual leadership. So this final of the 3 seminars focuses on or attempts to combine the elements of spirituality at work 6131 and 6132, the content, experiences, and practical insights, to demonstrate hopefully some personal learning that's been done and gives a specific look at your future personal development goals and some others directed mentoring goals as you've learned and discovered this course content. So again, you're going to be focusing here on a personal spiritual leadership development profile. Really, there are 2 things. There's the blog posts, which are discussing 2 books, one on spiritual leadership and the other one looking at a Christian perspective on meaning and calling in the workplace, and the other one is a leadership development portfolio. A special note, just so you're aware, that there are really 2 tracks here. One is the Christian religion track, and the other one is the spirituality track, or the spirituality at work track. So you have to pick one of the tracks. You will get exposed to content every other week from both tracks, so it's not like you're going to miss out on anything, but it's important for you to pick one of the tracks based on your religious or spiritual orientation. So let's just take a brief overview or quick look at one of the preeminent spiritual leadership models written by Jody Fry, developed by Jody Fry, and in this case the textbook, one of the 2 textbooks for the class is Maximizing the Triple Bottom Line. The other one is the Kingdom Calling, and this textbook here was done by Jody Fry and Melissa Niswich. So the book starts by defining spiritual leadership as something that intrinsically motivates and inspires others, but it does it through hope, faith, and a vision of service to key stakeholders through a culture that's based on altruistic love. And this altruistic love generates a sense of calling in one's life, believing that you have purpose, meaning, and you can make a difference, as well as a sense of membership, and that you belong, that a person belongs and is understood and appreciated. So the purpose of spiritual leadership is to satisfy the fundamental needs of both the leader and follower for spiritual well-being through calling and membership, to create a vision and value congruence along all organizational levels, and to foster higher levels of employee well-being, organizational commitment and productivity, sustainability and performance. The interesting thing with spiritual leadership, the more you research and look into it, it pulls from the great spiritual traditions of the world. You'll see that in the textbook. You also find that spiritual leadership, not only does it come out of and is identified with the great spiritual traditions of the spiritual religious traditions of the world, but also it's basically seen or adapted just by people who are altruistic. You can see it both in religious and non-religious people. So spiritual leadership is initiated by developing a vision, and basically what the spiritual leader does is they try to portray a journey of service to the people around them as a sense of calling. And what we're talking about when we say calling, largely in this class, we're talking about your purpose or meaning. The spiritual leadership is implemented through a culture that accepts a few things, but one of the things it accepts as an ethical base is altruistic love. And this caring for one another, this love, selfless love towards one another, creates membership. And then finally, spiritual leadership enables or supports employees' inner life or mindful practice to help them be more self-aware and conscious from moment to moment, and draw spiritual religious beliefs that are non-dual, that involve higher power or God or some philosophical teaching. And the best way to think about this is the culture basically recognizes the importance of others directed service, and therefore it has a tendency to cultivate the inner life of others because they know that's where that's found. So it begins with altruistic love. That's the impetus. That's the connection within the culture. It moves to a vision for performance, and finally is supported by the person's faith and hope. And I'm not going to walk through all this. You'll be reading this, but this is just the general schema for spiritual leadership. For those of you who come from a Christian orientation, you recognize these faith, hope, and love as being key to some of the Apostle Paul's teaching, and especially as it's seen in 1 Corinthians 13. And you'll see that within faith or hope, the spiritual leader has certain qualities, and altruistic love, there are certain qualities, and to provide and cast a vision, there are certain qualities. And you'll read through those, and you can reflect on these now if you want to pause this lecture. But the important thing, if you notice the arrows, is that they're all iterative and supportive. So the interesting thing about Fry's model, not only is it based in this case the religious tradition of Christianity, somewhat faith, hope, and love, but these faith, hope, and love are not unique to the Christian faith. That there are other religions that also foster, care about, and embrace love, that embrace hope and embrace faith, but they're all supportive. They act synergistically. The interesting thing with this research, not only is it a good spiritual leadership research and theory, is just simply a good model for people who would consider themselves to be more spiritual or could adapt itself to any other faith tradition. Theoretically, it's broadly appealing. But they've done a number of research projects, and you can Google Jody Fry to see the amount of quantitative research projects that have been done in this area. And largely what they're doing is determining if there are spiritual leaders, and if there are, to what degree the spiritual leadership qualities can predict certain things. And in fact, they found that there are many where there are spiritual leaders, there are many positively related outcomes. For instance, to organizational commitment, job satisfaction, altruism, conscientiousness, and you can read through the rest of it. But interesting things that are somewhat qualitative, but some very on-the-ground quantitative stuff like sales growth, job involvement, retention, organizational citizenship, loyalty at work. So ultimately, their research has been able to demonstrate where there are spiritual leaders or there's spiritual leadership in an organization. Again, this idea of spirituality is drawn from the rich traditions of many world faiths. But what they're finding is that there's a positive correlation or a positive impact in other organizational commitments. And those organizational commitments, in this case, generally have to do with organizational outcomes that the organization desires. In fact, what they've done is they've continued their research and progress to developing a scorecard, and this scorecard basically says that they're looking to measure and see progress, or how far the organization has gone to developing its spiritual leader characteristics. And ultimately, if you were to go to the slide before and look through those, you'd find that some of the organizational outcomes they're talking about fits largely into one of three categories: either people, retention, care, developing the people, the planet, the environment, the surrounding, and then of course performance. So people, planet, and profit are all on the spiritual leadership scorecard. The book will look more at that. But you may also want to just do a little digging. Again, the premise is that spiritual leaders, those people who are altruistic, centered in faith, hope, and love, again, which draws from a number of different world traditions, they are suggesting, that research is not only suggesting but attesting to the fact that there's more of a concern for both. In those organizations that have those spiritual leaders, there's more of a concern for people, planet, and profit. And finally, just so you kind of see their scorecard. Again, this will be revealed in the text, but just to kind of introduce you to these concepts. There's spiritual leadership, and then you have people and planet well-being that's fostered and maintained by calling membership, corporate social responsibility, the preservation of human dignity, and a culture of altruistic love. And there's performance excellence too. That's profit excellence, right? So you have organizational commitment, productivity, quality, customer satisfaction, financial performance. Okay, this is just to give you a foretaste in a sense of spiritual leadership. All of you will be exposed to spiritual leadership, and all of you will be exposed to this understanding of like kingdom calling, or the Christian understanding of spiritual leadership. You'll be exposed to all of it. You just have to pick which track you want to be in. a fairly healthy dose from both. But I would suggest that if you don't consider yourself a Christian, consider yourself from another faith tradition, or just consider yourself spiritual, the spiritual leadership track is for you. And again, if you consider yourself Christian, just the opposite. You should pick the other track. All right, we'll see you in the classroom.